When I walked into the offices of WOW Women of Wrestling, I had a true wow moment because I realized that I was truly needed. They needed someone that could organize and execute their vision, and I needed someplace that would let my talents shine. I started off at WOW purely working on the business side, but after all this time watching the superheroes train and compete, I just felt I could do it better. Modern day superheroes are smart. They're intelligent. They rule this world with their minds. That's what a superhero is. Keeping your body in shape is simple science. Studying your opponent, psychology. Assisting David McLean, business. Taking over WOW, diabolical.
You know, and we all have our 15 minutes of fame, and I'd like to take a couple of my 15 minutes to talk about the rights and the wrongs in the world of professional wrestling.
And it is for the WWE Championship.
This match is for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
For the World Heavyweight Championship.
The match and new NWA Heavyweight Champion.
We appreciate you guys coming out and taking your time to support women's wrestling in America.
This match is for the AWA World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of The Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling with your host, Mr. Green. Thank you for tuning in, and we are up to episode 35. 35. I am starting off and getting it off wrong. Let's rewind that. Welcome to review of episode 37, the School Yard Brawl. That is the episode that we're working on right now. I don't know what 35 came from. I have no idea. But before we go into that, I think it's appropriate to mention the passing, excuse me, of Peggy Lee Leather. This, as I'm recording this is about a week and a half ago, I think. That that wrestling community unfortunately lost her. Now, for some of you who are not aware of Peggy Lee Leather, but you watched WOW, then you would probably know her mostly as Thug. That would be the name that on a national level she is probably mostly known by. Just to go into a little bit of it. First, she passed away at the age of 64, I believe. Last that we saw of her on WOW, she was presented as the aunt, I think, of Hudson Envy is what she's known as on Independence. She's known as Spike on WOW television. I know she made a return, but a lot of people wouldn't know that because her return took place on the unaired season of WOW. Now you can go and you can watch that, but yeah, I know it's kind of lost to time. But anyway, she had been a wrestler for quite some time. I think she broke into the business, if I'm remembering correctly, in 1976. She was trained by the Fabulous Moolah. We will not go into Moolah's background and all that stuff right now. We'll just say that we know that she trained her, and we'll move on from that because, you know, Moolah carries some polarizing opinions these days. She had wrestled across multiple promotions, nowhere for a great length of time. So, whereas she had been wrestled in the WWF and wrestled in the AWA, I think she did some spots in the NWA as well. She never really stayed any place for a lengthy period of time where people would say, "Oh yeah, I remember her from, you know, the rock and wrestling era," or, you know, something along those lines. She of course did hook up with David McLean somewhere in his career and wrestled with him with Women of Wrestling. Her first run in the first season or the first incarnation, whichever one you want to call it, of WoW back in 2001. That's where she originated the thug persona. She also wrestled in David McClain's kind of forgotten promotion with POW, Powerful Women of Wrestling, which I guess would also kind of serve as somewhat of a spiritual successor to Glow. They all pretty much carried the same tone and vibe and all that stuff like that. She wrestled as Lady X in the LPWA, the Ladies Professional Wrestling Association. She was the women's champion there for quite some time. She wrestled under a mask as Lady X, but that it was her. We find that out now later in years gone by. In Florida Championship Wrestling, she was Peggy Lee Pringle. Now, I'm sure some people are like, well, who is Peggy Lee Pringle? She was listed as, or billed as, the sister to Percy Pringle III. For those of you who do not know or recognize the name Percy Pringle, you would probably know him better as Paul Bearer. That was the name that he had before he went into the WWF. So she intermingled and intertwined with a lot of people over the course of her career. It's sad to see that this has happened. She was presented in 2013 by WoW with the Princess Jasmine Trailblazer Award. I guess those would be the big things that people would know. Excuse me. And it's sad that she's passed. No reasons for her death that I'm aware of as of this recording. So, so if you're listening to this beyond that, it may come up at some other point. But 65 isn't an age where you're like, oh, well, she just dropped dead out of old age. So I'm sure they have to go in there, have to check and see if there's anything else that was going on. But all that aside, is sad to see that that happened, especially when she was part of a company that's seemingly growing. You would think that her legacy would be kind of tied up into that, more than anything else. I don't know if we ever will get a dedication from WoW on their television show. They should. I don't know if we're going to get that, but they should. It would be somewhat disappointing if they don't, really, because as long as she has wrestled, and as many different places that she wrestled over the territories, as far as a promotion that she hung her hat on, more or less, I guess WoW would be the closest. WoW would be the closest promotion that she had been with and come back to and have some sort of name and legacy attached to. Even though she was never the WoW champion, at that point, let's face it, she didn't really need it. And it was probably her job at that point to help elevate the promotion and elevate some of the people that's working underneath her along with it. And one other quick note of her career, she and I was going to say Bambi, but I'm trying to think of her WoW name. Selena Majors. She and Selena Majors worked I was going to say first, but we'll just put it this way. The only existing pay-per-view that WoW has produced so far, she worked that along with Selena Majors in the main event in a steel cage match, in a ridiculously super duper high steel cage, but that's what they did. So she and others like her got a lot of wrestling across the country, various promotions. It's unfortunate that in some cases we don't get the chance to have their body of work in one location to kind of go through, but WoW is going to be the closest. And all I can say at this point is Godspeed, Peggy Lee Leather. And, hopefully we will get to see some sort of tribute action to her in the upcoming weeks or the near future. Rest in peace. All right. I don't know how to transition out of talking about someone being dead into just talking about the show, so I'm just going to start going into the show. So here we have it. It is episode 37. Get it right this time. Schoolyard Brawl is the name, and the original air date for this would be May 27th. It is a standard WoW show. I think that is what we should say before we go anywhere with this. It is a standard WoW show, and by standard WoW, I don't mean bad, but it's also outside of a main event, doesn't really have a lot of things that's pushing forward at the same time. So you have to start the show the way they normally start. They do give a recap of what took place the prior week, and that being Vicky Lynn and Leia McCona in the main event. And this helped push the narrative of Vicky Lynn as the glue that holds the Fabulous Four together. I still don't see that, especially when they, can't really prove it. And they also set up for the main event later on today because they have to go back through those things. So that's segment 1. Go to segment 2 is GiGi Gianni in singles competition against Chantilly Chella, which I was really kind of surprised about. In this, I thought they were really pushing this tag team narrative of GiGi Gianni and her partner Amber Rodriguez. I mean, they just scored their first win as a team not all that long ago. So my initial thought was, well, they got to keep going. They finally scored one. They finally got this elusive win. I mean, there was little to no point to them getting hooked up and teamed up together because nothing's paid off. But they got the win 2 weeks ago from this recording over Steffi Slays and Jennifer Gen Z Florez. And as far as I know, they're still a team, but that didn't happen right here. So we'll just assume that they're still together. I hope so. You can never tell with WoW. WoW is up and down with that sometimes. But here, Chella and Gianni are facing off against each other in this match. Chantilly starts off by taking Gianni down over and over again. So we're establishing some ability here by Chantilly. Anybody that's listening to this already knows I'm not really fond of the name, but what can you do? I prefer her name on the indies, Ray Lynn, but it wouldn't be much of a cartoon show if you didn't have cartoon names. So that's how it starts with Chella kind of establishing how good she can wrestle. I guess it should be brought up that she threw her cloak or her cape out to the commentating booth like she does. I guess that's her gimmick now. And what really gets me, the only reason that we actually see AJ Mendez's face is because Dave McClain takes the cape that was thrown at him and puts it on the shoulders. So I guess there's no real big drive to have her on TV at this point. At some point in the match, GiGi, of course, takes control, cuts Chantilly off, and is able to then start establishing control in the match. I'll be honest, I thought that this was going to be the moment that GiGi would do something spectacular and somehow score a win. The big turn for her was coming out of the corner where she did a reversal, shot Chantilly into the opposite turnbuckle, which then gave Gianni, as Chantilly was attempting to float over top of her, GiGi catches her ankles and kind of shoots her in between the ropes, which sets her up for that double knee drop from the top, right across the abdominals of Chantilly Chella. GiGi also gets a chance to show, I guess, a little bit of a string spot, hoisting Chantilly from the mat into a firewoman's carry position and hits a cutter for the pin. Didn't score the pin, but she hit it for the pin. So, make of that what you will. But that would not be enough to hold Chantilly Chella down. And I like Gianni. I really do. I think that she does better in a tag team environment, or at least I would like them to continue once they started this win. I hope that it was going to just keep going, but I guess we have to wait a couple of weeks to see. But anyway, the coming out of the hoisting her up into the fire woman's carry position, she gets her up on the shoulders, looks like she's going for the TKO. Chella makes a great counter and holds on to the wrist and pulls her being GiGi, into an arm drag. GiGi gets up, runs towards Chella. She gets wrapped around in a rear waist lock, is able to get not free, but free of a spin heel kick that Chella was trying to nail her with. But although she ducked that, Gianni gets caught with the big cutter that puts her down for the count. She gets nailed following that quick evasive move from the kick, the duck, but gets caught in that. The pin goes down, and Chella gets her with a 1-2-3. Nice match, nice enough. It was cold, but it was a nice match. There's no angle here. It's really nothing to talk about there. You just have to move on. And we're going to the next one where we have her tag team, pronouns. Not her tag team, but Gianni's tag team partner, Amber Rodriguez. I guess I should say before this, they had another show recap, and then they go into this. Rodriguez is taking on Razor of the Heavy Metal Sisters. My first notes as I saw this were, are the Heavy Metal Sisters back together? ? Where is Mesmera? ? The commentators pretty much, had to talk about this. I mean, they talked about Mesmera not being there. And I don't know what to make of what was said for it, because it sounds like in some places that this could be a line to wrap up her run in WoW, if that makes sense to you. When sometimes people do and say things in wrestling to write people out of the show, even if it's not explicitly mentioned that they're being written off. But that basically what I got the impression of is there's a comment that Stephen Dickey said, if you can't handle the pit, you got to quit. Now that starts off with them talking about, oh yeah, Mesmera, where's Mesmera? She's not here. I think last I saw she was at a mosh pit. And then that's where that line comes from. So there's a couple of lines in between that alluding to that she went to some concerts. Within that concert, there was a mosh pit, and she just never returned. So that's why you got if you can't handle the pit, you got to quit. That was a line from Stephen Dickey. But that's pretty much where this is going here. I mean, Mesmera's gone, and they seemingly have just written her out of this. I said a while ago that she probably didn't need to be there. With all due respect to Mesmera. Now, she could show back up, and the only reason I said it is because something there has to be wrong. They've advertised her in previous seasons to have a singles match that never aired. Anytime that she was ever involved in any sort of match, it was the bare minimum. They almost worked around her. And they being the Heavy Metal Sisters, they almost worked around her. They would get the tags, and it would be Fury and Razor mostly doing the work, whereas Mesmera could kind of hang in the ringside. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I assume that this is the write-off, but while you never really know. She could be right there tomorrow for all I know. But the end of this is we have Razor now essentially the babyface in the match, even though she doesn't do anything spectacularly babyface. She's the one to she's the de facto babyface. That's probably a better way to put it. So somewhere in the course of this match, there is a botch. I can only assume that either there was not enough footage of a match for them to intercut into it to fix this, or no angles, or something that could be cut out that got cut to the crowd, anything. I can only assume that those things were just simply not an option, or the boss came in and said, "Oh yeah, it's perfect, fine, just put it on." Not perfectly fine, but it's not my promotion to run. So Razor, like I said, they had a little bit of a botch during the course of the match, where seemingly when Razor is coming in after Rodriguez, she was trying to catch her in what I assume to have been a faceplant. But that faceplant never took place because Rodriguez didn't go to her belly to take that impact. It's not, unheard of for somebody not to want to, take a massive bump, or maybe in this case, and I'm leaning towards this, I think there might have just been some miscommunication, and it happens. Sometimes you have people that are in the ring, and you might have said something and you hurt your opponent. I was going to say partner, but your opponent might have said something, but you might have heard something else, or you might not have understood it. But in either case, this is the botch happened, and the botch was pretty visible. As this match is going on, they are talking about the Heavy Metal Sisters and them being back together and whatnot. I mean, it kind of makes me feel like, what was this for? What was this angle for? It goes back to the same thing I said about a couple other people. Matter of fact, it goes back to the angle I said that Amber Rodriguez was born of, I guess. It was the Heavy Metal Sisters having arguments was like a angle that started off in the middle of the angle. There was no lead into it. It just kind of happened. And as fast as it happened, seemingly is over. I mean, Fury is here at ringside. I was part of this review that I did not bring up. Fury came out to ringside with her. So she was supporting her, which is also what led into them asking about, hey, what happened to Mesmer? Because she was the given manager of the group. And it just, I guess she's missing in action. And I also have to say, I brought up the botch, but I will give the commentators credit that they tried their best to cover this. Now, I said earlier about Razor that I think she's the de facto babyface, and that's probably the best way to put it, because with Fury outside, I mean, they still more or less cheated when Fury pushed the ropes toward Razor in order to try and get her to get out of a hole very quickly. It was fine, for her to do that, but it's like, okay, are we heels or are they babyface? I'm not entirely sure. And following that is where the big botch took place, if you're just looking, because they didn't even take it out of YouTube for that matter. And I think you would be able to see that what might have been getting ready to happen is that Fury was trying to take a face plant on Amber Rodriguez that just never took place because Rodriguez didn't go down to receive it. The best they could do at that point was just kind of cut the angle, but they didn't cut it enough to where you could see if it connected. So, again, we have to move on from that. The end of the match, Razor wins with reversing the overdrive into a short arm clothesline. And again, this is a cold match. It has nothing behind it. The only angle that took place within this match was them recapping the Heavy Metal Sisters, which apparently is over and done. So this match was fine. It does no favors for Rodriguez. She's back to losing. And she's lost so much. She lost as Commander Spars, and she's losing as Amanda Rodriguez. It's just two different incarnations of her, where her wins are very sporadic. I would assume that they'll get around to that, and maybe she'll rack up some wins eventually. Who knows? Hopefully. The next match, the next segment, it is a match, but we'll get to that. It's Reina Del Rey versus Jennifer Florez. This is the next match, and this was essentially a squash, and this also starts talking about things that aren't relative to what's going on in WoW currently. The commentators start talking about how Del Rey's partner has returned to the wasteland, and she's back in singles action. And this really kind of bothered me. I was like, what was the point of trying to talk people up onto this new team that we have in WoW? That again, they came out of nowhere, much like the angles and stuff. It just came out of nowhere. It wasn't that we fought each other a couple of times and we've developed a respect for each other and anything like that. They just do not have they just cannot get these angles at length. That's the best way that I can say it. They dropped this in the middle of an angle, just like I said with the last one. It's like it started in the middle. They just came out one day and they were together. And we were supposed to care. We were supposed to, oh man, it's a team now. Yay, we were supposed to be into it. You as a viewer were supposed to be into that. And not 2-3 weeks later, her partner's left. She's back in the wasteland, according to there. And now Del Rey's in singles competition. Well, why did they bother with this angle? And it didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything. It didn't help Wrecking Ball. It didn't help Del Rey. It just, why did they bother? This isn't a knock on the match, by the way. The match is fine. It is what it's supposed to be, but I just don't get it. This was a big person, little person match. It's David and Goliath. I don't know the female incarnation that I can say. And it's really not even worth talking about one angle to or one spot in the match to the next. This was a showcase for Del Rey. It was a glorified squash match. And for the third time in this episode, you've got a cold match with nothing really there that was fine and just watching. But if you're looking at it to get something deeper, or if you're looking at it because you're looking at it before some sort of back and forth classic, you're probably not going to get that. So it just was what it was. That's all I've got. It really could have used a promo. It was a clean win. That's the other thing. It was a clean win by Del Rey. Could have used some promos to kind of elevate the whole situation, but there's oftentimes that we get promos in WoW that are pretty vague. They're surface level, and they just leave it at that. Florez looked good in the match. She just did not look like she could overcome the match. So we're just talking about her visual aesthetic. She was a very attractive young lady. It just, in this environment, she could not overcome the venomous, see what I did there, Reina Del Rey. It was clean win. Del Rey wins. We will move on. There's a preview of next week's show, tag title match, the Tongas versus Sweet Heat and Steffi Slaves versus Chainsaw. Those are the matches that they are preparing for. We get a Samantha Smart profile video, and this one I liked. I like this one because she stayed in character. She wasn't being herself talking about Samantha Smart. She kind of blended Samantha Smart with who she is. And it being done in character works. She wasn't talking about her hardships and heartache and this happened to me and blah, blah. And I'm happy to be a wild superhero like everybody else did before they got there. She didn't do any of that. She talked about why she left. I forget what area Indiana she said she was from, but she talked about things like why she left. She's like, do you know about anything that's in such and such Indiana? So you're right. And no one can think anything good in there. That's why I left. So she came across as a snobbish and arrogant heel, and it was great. Her winning or losing following this, particularly when she's talking herself up and she's talking about Samantha Smart, how brilliant she is and all this stuff, and how she manages to keep on top and that she's IQ superior and all that stuff. Her losing after having a vignette like that is not a big issue. In fact, you would kind of want it at that point. So I think they did very well here. I just hope that they do not go back to form and back to the thing that I was complaining about. That being having these vignettes and promos and video packages for people who are going to go out there and lose no less than 5 minutes later. Here, like I said, didn't matter. Didn't matter what her purposes was beyond this. And this was well done. Next segment was the backstage segment where the Disciplinarian and Samantha Smart prepared for the match. And that, talk about, I can't believe that they'd have us do this, but they look unified, which I thought was also good. We cut to Randy Rara and Coach Campanelli basically doing the same thing in their locker room or their bathroom, whatever you want to call it. And they're packing up these book bags loaded with schoolyard items that they can use within the course of the brawl. This video rolls into a feud recap that sets up the main event for this brawl. I don't know if I would say a feud. I guess if we're going to talk about Rah-Rah and Campanelli against the Disciplinarian Samantha Smart, I suppose it's a feud, but I guess it's more with Randy Rah-Rah and Samantha Smart rather than the teams. But that's also neither here nor there. The end result is that all four are in this unsanctioned, uncensored match. Well, I can't say unsanctioned. It's sanctioned by WoW. But uncensored match. But I don't think I said how Del Rey won now that I'm thinking about it. Before I get too far, for anybody, I want to say Reina Del Rey does come off like almost a complete badass. And you have to appreciate that she just didn't have anybody else to feud with anymore. The fact that the Beast kind of disappeared, it took her primary rival out of the picture. But to answer how she won, Dragon Sleeper on Gen Z. But before she taps out or passes out, Del Rey lets her go. She lets her go so that she can stagger around, wondering where she's at until she gets clotheslined in the back of the head by Reina Del Rey. That puts her down for the count. 1, 2, 3. There you go. She moves, it moves on. So let's go now into our main event. Coach Campanelli and Randy Rah-Rah versus the Disciplinarian and Samantha Smart. Notice there is no G.I. Jane here. G.I. Jane, who was somewhat labeled as part of the group. I mean, they never officially said that, I guess. But she had been there, and I appreciate the fact that somebody in commentary brought it up. rather than just letting this slide. Somebody in commentary brought it up, and where's G.I. Jane? So whether she's there now, I appreciate that they at least acknowledge it. That is a plus. So let's go back through some of this to, for those who might not know why they're in this thing. I mean, of course, they leave a little segment to recap everything, how they got here. It was a nice transition of a feud between Campanelli and Rara, because Campanelli and Rara, former tag team champions, they were coming out of a feud with Miami's Sweet Heat. And I want to say fortunate for them. I mean, they had to move on at some point. So that they got kind of wrapped up into this new thing wasn't all that bad. And it starts off with, basically Samantha Smart just being a bully. And the key point of this feud is why I'm recapping it, so that when we get to the end of this, it hopefully makes some sort of sense, or at least they tried to. The key point here is that Samantha Smart decided that she wanted to, I guess, teach them a lesson, and she brought the whistle of Coach Campanelli back to their locker room after she had lost it, allegedly. Of course, we find out she, Smart stole it. Now, keep in mind, Samantha Smart, they were getting ready to have this tag team match just before this. This would have been G.I. Jane, as we just stated, with the Disciplinarian, taking on Campanelli and Rara. But since this fast-acting glue was there, and Randy Rara acts like an 8-year-old sometimes, she's like, "Ooh, can I blow the whistle?" So rather than getting it on Coach Campanelli, they got it on Randy Rara, and she could not open her mouth because it set so fast. So now they went into the match, and then, Randy couldn't wrestle well because she couldn't breathe, or she couldn't take a deep breath, and the Disciplinarian and Jane won. At least, yeah, I believe it was G.I. Jane. So anyway, the next thing was a match with the stipulation that if Coach Campanelli is able to get and defeat the Disciplinarian, which, surprise, surprise, she did, Randy Rara would get 5 minutes along with Samantha Smart. Campanelli won. Rara gets the 5 minutes, but Samantha Smart runs. Now, I didn't like the idea that she ran around and all that stuff like that. It made sense, but, I didn't necessarily care that she ran around because I wanted it to get some more heat on Smart before they actually got to it, and I didn't understand why the match ended abruptly when no one made a call. But the fact that they got to this point following it at least justifies the non-ending ending. So Smart runs out, and that's when we like, hey, because chalk was thrown in the eyes of Randy Rara as she was chasing Samantha Smart. It got thrown out there. Oh, okay, you want to play with schoolyard things? Well, why don't we just bring everything? We can bring books and rulers and staplers and blah, 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 and we'll just make it a schoolyard brawl. On the surface of it, that sounds silly. On the surface. But I have to admit, this works for them. If ever there was a time to have something like this, it works for them. All four of these people, this fits. You've got an evil teacher with the Disciplinarian. You got Samantha Smart, who's allegedly, a genius. Coach Campanelli and Randy Rara, all school-bound things. This works, and it works fine. I have no problem with it. I mean, it's not like I haven't heard sillier names elsewhere. So the Schoolyard Brawl, perfectly fine, works for me. And quite honestly, this is a one-match show. All matches that I just talked about before were good matches. They're fun to watch. Everybody did a good job. GiGi Gianni and Chantilly Chella, fine match. Amber Rodriguez and Razor, botch aside, fine match. Del Rey and Florez. Florez did exactly what she was supposed to do. She didn't need to be competitive. She got a couple of spots in, but ultimately Del Rey won the match convincingly. But none of those three matches had anything to them. There were no angles there. There was no story. There was nothing that built to or came from any of them. They were just matches to fill the hour, more or less. And that's I wish I could say it was different, but that's ultimately what it came down to. It's just matches to kind of fill the hour. So both teams, getting back to the main event, come out with book bags full of quote-unquote weapons. Now I use the term weapons loosely because, these are all schooled items. You could see it's hard to see whether she glued it together or not. But I know back in the day, I haven't been in a school store in a while. My mother was a teacher. That's how I know these things. But she had like a multitude of yardsticks. And for a while, it looked like they were just kind of glued together to be this big one, massive one. But she put a few of them down and just went in with the one. Now, and that one was still thick. And the one item that I wanted used, if anything else, and it was a perfect time for it, this woman walks around, the woman being the disciplinarian, she walks around with a gigantic paddle of all the weapons to have and not use. Why not this paddle? I mean, this thing is thick. Go back and look at it on TV. It is a thick ass paddle. If I wanted to go into any sort of fight and I wanted to knock somebody out and I only had these items presented to me, I mean, because they got a bunch of silly items. Let's be honest. What are you going to do in a fight with a notebook? I mean, yeah, you can smack somebody in the head with it, but I don't know if that notebook is going to be the thing that's going to help you win. This paddle can help you win. But, they probably didn't want to utilize that because that would look too serious. Sometimes I get the impression that WoW does not want to be overly serious with that. They just want to, be kind of serious, but not too. I mean, I don't know what their middle ground is because all the characters and costumes and colors and all that stuff would make you think that is for kids. But the show comes on like 11 o'clock at night. So it can't be directed for kids specifically. I don't know. I don't know what the middle ground here is. In any case, the match, and I'm going to apologize for clearing my throat like that. I don't know what the hell is happening. Anyway, they get into the ring, and what happens is what you would expect to happen. The heels jumpstart the match. Nothing wrong with that. That's what the heels are supposed to do. And I think within this kayfabe universe, I mean, let's take this for what it is just for a second. In this kayfabe universe of WoW, I loves me the Disciplinarian. I liked Ivory Robin or Robin Reed better because Robin Reed could win. The Disciplinarian has a horrible track record. She's lost far more than she's ever won over the course of 2 or 3 years in a while. So and I'm willing to bet that if she had 10 matches, on the average, 8 of them she'd lose. On the average. If I am not the disciplinarian, if I was Samantha Smart, I would want G.I. Jane to be in there with me. G.I. Jane basically helped secure the first win that stable has had. Maybe the most significant. And Jane and the Disciplinarian look good together. It's understood that she's not there, and the commentators did bring it up, so we can't go and be like, "Where's G.I. Jane?" They already addressed that. It just seemed like if there was a time for Samantha Smart to try to do anything to save herself and get somebody a surprise. I guess this would have been it. But we go with the disciplinarian here because for all intents and purposes, it's somewhat of a handicap. Not a handicap match in that she's running back and forth trying to fight both of them. A handicap in that it's been established that Samantha Smart's a manager in this universe and she doesn't really have a lot of physicality underneath her. And she looks it. Like when the match started after that quick jump, she seemed like she wanted to fight Campanelli, but she couldn't. It's like she didn't know what to do, so Campanelli just kneed her in the guts and threw her outside. That's where you got the disciplinarian and Smart kind of not conversing, but I guess going over game plan, whatever you want to call it. And then the match is off and is underway. And this is why I say I don't know what they are aiming for with that, because most times when we get these kind of uncensored brawls, I mean, they are all over the place. And it doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous items. Look up the Memphis concession brawl. I mean, it's famous for that. Now, you ain't got to look up the Memphis one. Look up one in WCW, the Harlem Heat versus the Nasty Boys. Usually when we see these type of fights and brawls, it's done with a little bit of seriousness to it. This didn't really have that. It was entertaining, but the seriousness of it was somewhat at a minimum. It was just enough to provide the match without any visible dangerous items. That's probably the only way I can really describe it. You have them throwing small dodgeballs at each other. I can't even say big ones. I mean, they're like the size of maybe a grapefruit, but they're dodgeballs. They're air and plastic. They're not like the big ones back in the day that was could stand in front of your chest. They had a tennis racket, but no one used the tennis racket on each other. Instead, Randy Rah is standing in an aisle and she's taking shots at the ping pong balls or whatever they were, because I really couldn't see them all that well, being thrown at her. Samantha Smart's trying to duck and dodge. Randy Rah takes a group of notebooks and hits her with it. Coach literally has papers in her hand as a weapon and blows the whistle in the disciplinarian's face, and she runs off holding her ears. The coach is writing stuff on the paper. I don't know what, and I don't know why. That just seems stupid. You get some very light love taps of this tennis racket on the disciplinarian from Randy Rah. It's just, and they're throwing things. Now, Samantha Smart running around and running away, that makes sense because she's not a wrestler. Which goes back to the whole thing that I said that the disciplinarian, for lack of a better term, and more or less is involved in a handicap match because she had to do the bulk of the work. While Samantha Smart ran and ducked and dodged, and she threw things at Rah or Campanelli when necessary, but she didn't really get engaged with them any more than she had to. So let's go towards the end of the match. But I mentioned all of the items that were used to say, or to back the point that I'm not sure who this match was to appeal to. The match is fine. I'm not saying that the match isn't fine, but it's just, it kind of exists in this weird space because this is supposed to be a blow-off match. This is a blow-off match of what was supposed to have been a feud, even though if it was short. But it's done so lightly that it's hard to take serious at times when I'm seeing this person throwing these light balls at each other, and I'm going to stand here in the aisleway as you throw these ping pong balls, and I'm going to try to swat them. It's things like that. The end of the match is Samantha Smart's on the outside. Remember, like I said, she had ducked and she had dodged. And by the end of this thing, basically what she was doing is she just was on the apron. She did not get in to help. But Smart had the yardstick in her hand. She gave a small swat to Rara, just enough to kind of make her angry. And then the disciplinarian runs across and she slams she slams Rara. Rara's down. Then she runs across and she gets Coach Campanelli in a full Nelson, which sets Campanelli up for the hit from Samantha Smart. However, as you would guess it, Campanelli ducks. Smart brings the yardstick down on the disciplinarian, which knocks her out cold, which I am still of the mindset that it should be something else. That yardstick, even though I'm sure it would hurt like a mother, that yardstick doesn't seem like it would be enough to knock you out unless you really brought the thunder with that thing, like he brought it down like a hammer. And even then, I mean, I could see if she was writhing around in pain on the floor, but not necessarily knocked out. But in this instance, she's knocked out and she's out cold. You know, and so now Smart comes in like, oh my God, what did I do? You know, she completely ignoring the fact that she had somebody behind her that was, ready to take her out at a moment's notice. Rara comes back in the ring. She has a pom-pom in her hands, takes a quick jab at her face and knocks Samantha Smart out as well because it looks like she popped her in the face with a hole puncher. I know they said stapler on the in the commentary, but it looks like a 3-punch hole puncher to me. So they win. Campanelli and Rara, the former tag team champions, win the match. And now came the spot that good production worked against the commentary. So at the end of the match, not Campanelli, Rara wanted to, I guess we'll say, get even. So she takes a ruler that she sees on the other side of the ring. She picks up a pencil, look like she's going to draw on her face initially, but she doesn't do that. So she goes and she gets a ruler that's laying around, and she goes to Samantha Smart and crams it into her mouth so that the ruler is sideways and she's got her mouth wrapped around the ruler. And now you got the commentators, not just the commentators, you got David McClain in particular. Oh my, they've glued her mouth shut. Now, the problem with that is that the camera was directly in the face of Samantha Smart. Her lips weren't even closed. She had her teeth on the ruler, which I guess with this fast-acting super glue, it could have been that her teeth was closed shut. But that wasn't the case. I mean, there was clearly nothing on the ruler also. If you're going to do angles like that, I mean, you know, at least you could get the prop. It doesn't take much. You can smear Vaseline on it. And that's an easy thing. You could have had Campanelli take a tube of ointment, something that wasn't going to kill Samantha Smart. Obviously, tell them don't swallow this. But you could have had her take a tube of mild ointment or something like that, squeeze it on this, hold it up so that people can see it, claim that is glue, have your props department or somebody fix it so that the label's covered, claim that is glue, put it on there, have something to spread it out or smear it or whatever, and then put it in the mouth and instruct her, close your lips around this so people can see the ointment or, the quote glue on your lips. You can't blame the cameraman here. The cameraman probably was doing what he was instructed to make sure you get this shot. You can blame, I almost don't want to even blame David McClain because these things do happen in wrestling. They happen because the commentator, whomever it happens to be, calls what they know is supposed to happen opposed to what they see. It's not a common thread. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, particularly when you're told, and at the end, this is going to happen. I'm going to do such and such, and you're just calling it. And that was the problem. They just called it. Or he just called it. Oh, look at her. Her mouth is sealed shut. And when it was very evident and it was very obvious from the teeth shot to the later shot when Samantha Smart closed her lips on the ruler, that her mouth was not legitimately glued. Now, we don't want her mouth glued in real life, but at least help me back up the illusion. That's all. That's all we're looking for out of that. And I reiterate, these type of things happen when you call what you know was supposed to take place opposed to what you're seeing. One of the biggest examples of that came from somebody who's largely regarded as one of the greatest commentators in the world, Jim Ross, from years and years and years ago. I want to say SummerSlam 96. But the match was, not Mankind. It's Mick Foley, but I was about to say the wrong personality. Dude Love. Was it Dude Love? No, I was right at first. It was Mankind. It was Mankind taking on the then Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Fast forward to the end of the match, because they had already told the world that he grew up loving Superfly Jimmy Snuka. He wants to come off the cage and yada, yada, yada. So Mick Foley goes to the top of the cage, and what was supposed to take place is he was going to rip the shirt open, and there would be a heart-shaped tattoo symbolizing Dude Love, and before he came off with the big elbow from the top. What you got was a shirt tear and a red smear on his chest, because it was an actual tattoo. And it wasn't even what do they call it, the hemp tattoo, the henna. I don't even know if that thing existed at that time, but it wasn't used with it wasn't put on with a paint or something that could resist that. And they have those, but apparently they didn't use it that day. So the sweat that he had in the match just smeared it off. But yet and still, you had Jim Ross. Oh my God, the heart, the dude. He called it anyway. Regardless of that, he didn't see it, because that was what was supposed to happen. And all it did was it served to make that scene look silly. So in this case, and the only reason I point this out to David McLean is that he is not just a commentator. He's the executive producer. He's the general manager. He's the lead commentator. He's the host of the show. You know, he does everything. And I'm sure he's probably a producer backstage too. So with something like that, the first thing I would tell her, take that line out. If I heard it again and I saw what I saw on that screen, just take it out. Don't have me on screen saying something that we know clearly isn't true. Take that line out. I could do some ADR. I can redub it. Just take the line out. But that's where it was. And good prevails in this instance. Campanelli and Ra get their win. And they get even with Samantha Smart. And you get the last promo, which was pretty short and sweet by Campanelli. Outside of her addressing what just took place, even though she does well as in the the promos, it was generic and directionless. It's not like it went somewhere beyond that. I start to get the impression that some of these ladies, if not all of them, are instructed to don't be too specific in these promos, because it seems like this is a running theme. You can get somebody that'll cut a promo, and if it happened directly in front of or after their match, they can come out there and do a promo, but it's usually not very specific. It's kind of vague. The closest thing I've gotten to a specific promo aimed at somebody is maybe the Tonga Twins. But everybody else is like, you bring them on, I'll take on anybody. I'll do this. I'm the champion. That's what winners do. You're welcome. And that Campanelli catchphrase that she's trying to get over, you're welcome. I don't know if she'll be successful getting it over, but seems like she's trying. But that was the show. This entire show, except for the main event, was all cold matches. The matches were fine, but none of them had any lead-ins or follow-ups. So this is a one-match show. More the matches, it seems probably could have used some promos or some follow-up time with the wrestlers. It could have helped fill blanks, and it could have helped get some people into whatever next phase of wrestling life they need to be in a while. But yeah, this was a one-match show. Not a horrible thing, but it is what it is. I mean, what else can I say? That if you're tuning in based on you having watched WoW as a series up to this point, the only match that you should be concerned about or want to see is the maybe 8-minute match of the Schoolyard Brawl, and that will be that. I wish I had more. This is like the second or third time I did this, because when they don't have a lot of angles in the match, it's not really much to go into. But that's what happened. We don't really have a lot of angles here. They're just kind of matches with good people, but just matches. And they didn't, most of them didn't go anywhere. And this was a complete blow off. So now we got to wonder what is next on the line for Campanelli and Rara. They're going to go back for the championships. What's next for the Disciplinarian and Samantha Smart? Last I saw, Samantha Smart got the mother trucker's truck towed out of Los Angeles and sent to Tennessee. I mean, she must be making some good money to do that. But what is next? Who knows? And on that note, I would like to wish you all a thank you, very fond thank you for tuning in to this episode, The Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. I wish there was some more stuff to go in depth on, but sometimes you have days like that. But as we move, we will prepare for the next week's program, which theoretically should be a far better show. It's got another tag team main event. It would be the Tonga Twins taking on the Miami Sweet Heat when they finally get the rematch that they have been asking for, or allegedly asking for. And so that works for me. I would love to see it, and I'd love to talk about it. That is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the Rights and Wrongs Pro Wrestling Podcast. I absolutely appreciate you taking your time out of your day and or night to support this channel and support the endeavors of cutting up or reporting on women's wrestling. If you are so kind, please feel free to stop by the website WPNWrestling.com if you want to support our product in any way. You can go there. There's the nexus for everything that is tied into the WPN. That's our Instagram, our Facebook, our YouTube. They're all connected from there. It is the nexus of all WPN activity. And hopefully, when WoW comes back, we will have some surprises that I will be able to report and to say that I was looking forward to, and some good matches. Time will tell. We give it a week, and then we will know. So, ladies and gentlemen, This is Mr. Green saying that this is Mr. Green saying so long. And we will see you on the next go round. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the WPN's Rights and Wrongs of Pro Wrestling. If you have questions or comments, please contact us via our Facebook or our YouTube channel at the Women's Pro Wrestling Network. If you're new to the WPN, feel free to subscribe to our channel and like our page. We appreciate your support. Thank you again for listening.